Hello, William and Mary. I'm so glad that we're able to come together this way, live, even if at a distance. Before I begin, just a few words of welcome. Last year, as I was coming to know William and Mary, I heard a visitor ask a student, what makes William and Mary unique? And she said immediately, we take care of each other. That's who we are, and that's what we're called to do at this moment. So wherever you may be, as you're tuning in, whomever you may be caring for right now, thank you. We're imagining these conversations as a series that will run through the next month. We want you to have a chance to connect with William and Mary's response to COVID-19, and we'll invite different guests for each conversation. I'll introduce today's guests in just a moment. But first, I want to give you a brief update and share a little bit of what I see ahead. The past 3 weeks have been a time of incredible challenge and creativity, and I couldn't be prouder of the William and Mary community. In one sense, it was easy to know the path forward because our mission is so clear. We bring exceptional undergraduates and graduate students together with outstanding faculty and staff to learn and to make new knowledge. And in that work together, we build deep relationships, strong connections that last a lifetime. So knowing this mission from the beginning, we've been clear about our goals for the decisions that we've had to make. First goal has been to safeguard the health of our community. The second, for students and faculty to keep teaching and keep learning. For staff, do everything we can to maintain our research operations and our university operations. And for every one of us to do our part to slow the spread of COVID-19 so our healthcare system can respond. And so the brave healthcare workers that are on the front line are safe. So what we've done for the sake of those goals in the past several weeks is extraordinary and has been very difficult. Many of you know this, but I want to take a moment to name the work so that it's visible. We shifted to remote teaching for the remainder of the semester. And it's a testament to the resilience of our students and our faculty and the support of our new studio for teaching and learning innovation that this is going well. The studio has stepped up to help our faculty maintain our instructional quality during this transition. We've required most of our employees to telework. That's familiar to many of us around the country. Some staff in facilities management and in other areas do need to be on campus to keep the university running, and their safety is a top priority. We'll be holding a town hall next week for staff to focus on this and on shifting modes of work. I am so grateful to Governor Ralph Northam. Virginia's governor has doubled emergency leave to 4 weeks for hourly and for salaried staff. And it's impressive how quickly staff across the university have pivoted to sustain our learning mission and our business operations. We're doing our work differently at William and Mary, and William and Mary is running strong. I shared with the community that COVID-19 cases increased dramatically in Williamsburg last week, and they're still accelerating. We don't know when it will peak. So our hearts are with those who are ill in our community and those who are caring for them. Because of this, we made the difficult decision to close residence halls to protect the health of our community, our students, and our staff. We ensured that no one was left without shelter. So thanks to the round-the-clock work by student affairs staff and the Reeves Center staff, everybody is settled, and we've been able to support students short of funds due to incredible generosity from our donors, generosity to the Heart Fund, to which Student Assembly has committed additional resources, thank you, and to the International Student Fund. Now that we have addressed the immediate needs, Student Affairs are focusing on supporting our normal activities. The Cohen Career Center is at full bore, and also discovering what new needs our students have that we can support. We've also begun to work through the process of issuing rebates. This is not the semester that we expected, and we recognize that. Though our costs are not distributed equally throughout the term, we've returned room and board and parking fees, and we've prorated those across costs that we've already incurred this spring. I want to thank Financial Services and the Bursar's office. That staff has been working incredibly hard to get those fees and those rebates processed as soon as they could. And I also want to thank so many incredible students who saw greater need in others and chose to donate their rebates to help their peers through the Heart Fund. As many of you know, we've canceled both our winter and our spring athletic seasons, consistent with decisions by the CAA and the NCAA. And we've paused all university events and are reimagining how we can continue to connect in other means. The Alumni Association is a great resource for alums who are wanting to help and who know that the calendar is changing and want to find out how. As for commencement 2020, I know this matters so much. We will do everything to ensure that it happens in person. We don't know when yet, but I am confident that we can figure this out. It's incredibly important to seniors and their families. It's important to me. It's important to our faculty and staff. Some ceremonies really need to be in person, and this is one. So that's just a few of the major shifts. There's others. It has taken a powerful sense of shared purpose and an outpouring of resourcefulness. And I am so proud of how this community has responded. Bruce and I just took a walk earlier today. Campus is beautiful. We have had a blizzard of pollen, so everything is William and Mary yellow. And it's also eerie and very strange to have it be silent. We miss the noise from sorority court so much. Wait, yes, sorority court is noisy. I see some skepticism here. A little noisy, the right kind of noisy. Students, I want you to know you are missed. To be self-quarantined instead of working and living together and to studying together is really challenging. It brings home so forcefully that although this is an incredibly beautiful place, William and Mary is not the buildings, it is the people. Many have asked me what lies ahead, and the truth is we don't know. There are some things we know though. We know that every individual choice to self-quarantine will make a difference. And we know that soon we'll have a better understanding of how those choices are impacting the spread of the virus locally here and nationally. And we know that what we're doing right now is temporary. Although I'm incredibly proud of what we're accomplishing right now. This is not William and Mary going online for all times coming. So we will be back together. We will be back together again to celebrate how we stood together right now and to mourn and to honor what we've lost. I think it's incredibly important to acknowledge those harder feelings. It might be shock or sadness of being uprooted from life and work and community. It could be stir craziness. It could be loneliness. One of the things that I hope that we gain from this time is a better understanding of how our different feelings can blend together. It's really important for students to know, for all of us to know, that being upset or angry is not the opposite of standing together. Feeling sadness is not disloyalty. We're grieving real losses. We're grieving collective losses of traditions that we're not passing through together, and we're grieving individual losses, personal ones, of not being able to say goodbye. When we come together again, we're going to be changed by this experience. I was raised by a relentless optimist, my dad, who always sees the glass as half full. Hey, Dad. Even with the worst challenges, he's pressing us to think, what are the opportunities in this crisis? So I give you that question to reflect on. And I hear a few of my own reflections so far. I do see some immediate gains, small things like the fact that library staff have worked to find high quality open source textbooks. We need those for the flexibility they bring us right now. In the long run, as faculty assess them and come to use them, that could save our students a lot of money on their course costs in the future. Similarly, HR has done something we've been wanting to do for a long time, and that is set learning goals, learning and skilling up as a work expectation for every employee. For staff whose work has changed, we're asking them to dedicate their time to learning skills that William & Mary badly needs. I also think there are some big things that I'm noticing. The beginning of a national conversation about how work and home life is balanced as we have Zoom meetings with people and watch their kids race through the backgrounds. When Bruce and I were raising our kids as a two-career family, it wasn't very acceptable to talk about how one second shifted and how one balanced those deep commitments that sometimes compete with each other. And I think that's going to change in this country for good. Another big thing is that I think we are going to be, I hope we are going to be more aware of the importance of service work. My mom is a labor economist, and she taught me to seek out ways to make invisible work more visible. So think about the service work that I just named in the last few minutes. William & Mary facilities, housekeeping, IT, finance and accounting, back office in the library. So many more service staff have pulled together to make William & Mary possible and successful right now. Those are the people that make William & Mary, and that's the labor that can be much more visible now. I think when we look outside William & Mary and we see the grocery store clerks and the gas station attendants and the people who are driving trucks and trains to ensure that we have the critical resources we need in this crisis, I hope that their work becomes more visible too. And I think we have a real opportunity here to acknowledge and embrace that work for each other and for our larger communities. So those are some of the good things I see coming our way. Last thing before I open up conversation, I do want to say thanks again to everyone who has supported our Heart Fund and our International Students Fund and the Fund for the Studio for Teaching and Learning Innovation. That generosity is going to help our students who are impacted financially, and it will help the faculty and staff who are moving us online in such great ways. So thank you very much. So let me turn to the guests now. Right, guests, I'll remind you of our goals. This is a chance for the community to hear some of what faculty and students are experiencing this week. It would be great to, as we go, touch on some of the questions we're hearing. I've tried in my last few remarks to touch on maybe the top 5 that we've heard over the last week from the community, but please remind me if I've missed one. So our guests, for everybody out there in the ether, are Student Assembly President Kelsey Vita. You can wave. Junior Class President Aria Austin. Student Assembly Chief of Staff Avi Chada. Dr. Carrie Dolan, who is an Assistant Professor of Kinesiology and Epidemiologist. And Dr. John Swaddle, who is the Professor and Chair of Biology. So I'm going to start us off by asking some questions of the students and then kick things over to the faculty. Kelsey, maybe could you start just by telling us a little bit of what your week was like?
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. And thank you again just so much for including us. We just feel really lucky to be a part of this conversation. Just to be honest, I have had a bit of a wild week. I've been learning to balance my schoolwork and now my increased responsibilities as student assembly president, just making sure that the transition of a 70 plus student organization in charge of student leadership is that transition is made smoothly to online. We started having meetings on Zoom, figuring out what that looks like, while I'm also kind of learning to online learn. And I've been really lucky to have very understanding professors who know that this transition is difficult and who are adaptive with the ways that we learn online. I'm in a class where we have both synchronous class on Zoom, and then we have these sort of lessons that we do on our own by ourselves when we come back together as a class. And that's been it's been really wonderful to have that space and also that togetherness. I'm very extroverted, so I think it's also been a little difficult for me to learn how to socially connect with others through learning when I'm not with them in person. So it's been a wild week, but it's been good, and I'm staying optimistic, and I'm grateful to be here. President Rowe, your mic is muted. Sorry.
I was going to say, I do think we have a lot to learn from the introverts among us. That's another dimension of making visible some strengths that the rest of us can learn from. Abby, tell us what your week was like.
So cold calling still exists, is what I've learned in the ether. But it's been a really interesting week. I think a lot of what I've been doing outside the classroom has been supporting Kelsey and supporting our student government as we seek to move online our own operations, but also kind of making sure that student needs are met in the various new needs that are popping up now with this new system that we've adopted. In addition to that, though, kind of in the classroom, I think the one thing that's been really interesting is just kind of seeing how the things that we were studying already have been changed by the larger world around us. I was in a lecture yesterday with Professor Bob Williams in his strategy class, and he talked about artificial intelligence, and it was on the syllabus for a while. But it was interesting to look at it from a new lens of seeing how this technology is now being used to find vaccines and how it's changing the way we work and helping us move online, move whole organizations online. So that's been really interesting. And like Kelsey said, I mean, the flexibility of the people that I've worked with over the last few weeks has been incredible. I'm doing an independent study with a professor in the government department, Professor Oakes, and she's just been phenomenally flexible. And that's just the case for so many of my faculty. So yeah.
Aria, we were talking yesterday about extracurricular life and how that's happening. And it would be wonderful if you would describe that a little bit more.
Yeah, of course. I really want to commend the student body for making this transition in a really difficult time. And I know I had a great honor society induction virtually through Zoom, which is really cool to see everyone's face and to commend the student leaders that ended up running that and trying to make it the best experience that we could in the situation. And I personally had Zoom dinners with friends, Zoom lunches, and my acapella group, we've been talking a lot over Zoom and really facilitating that bond that we have, although we're not together. I think students are really trying to say, like, this is rough, but we're going to do this together. That just shows that when we say one tribe, one family, we mean that, even though we're not on campus.
That's really wonderful. Yeah. You are an artist too. Like, how does that happen remotely?
You know, I will say I was really looking forward to my homebrew, which I know a lot of people do homebrews in the spring, which are run through AMP, and the AMP committee reached out and said, if you want to do a virtual homebrew, you can totally do that. So that was really cool. And I know that my acapella group, the Kleptomaniacs, we were seeing like how we can still spread music online. So our PR person, he created a TikTok. I know a lot of people are on TikTok, so we might start making some TikToks. And we're also seeing how we can spread music through our Instagram and other platforms such as Facebook.
That's neat. Carrie, can you talk a little bit about being somebody who teaches about epidemics right now? I imagine that's amazing and maybe kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, so I'm a spatial epidemiologist and a global health researcher, and what I do is I figure out where there's big pockets of disease are and how the things we pay for to stop them impact health. So this week has been a lot for me because I've watched the science that I know and love be talked about daily by people who know something about it and people who don't know anything about it, and see what happens when that science collides with fear. And I really struggled with how to teach epidemiology online in the middle of a global pandemic while simultaneously thinking about how to teach my 9-year-old how to make a cursive Q, which is hard if anyone hasn't had to do that in a while, and also how to divide. But there's some really great online resources that we're able to pull, some experts in the field. We're able to talk about flattening the curve in a new way. Mostly this week, though, for me has been sort of this idea of I've been here before. This is very familiar to me. I was at Tulane during Hurricane Katrina, and I ended up across the country finishing grad school without my books, without my calculator, without my computer, saying goodbye to my graduation and my runs and my friends. And what I know is that a resiliency develops from this. And I see that same resiliency in my students this week online. They are doing things they didn't think they could do and learning things they didn't know they could learn. And that's just going to continue to grow, and they're going to carry that throughout the rest of their life.
Thanks. That's really lovely. I was going to ask both of you maybe what are your favorite moments, you and John, and what was the biggest surprise that you've experienced so far?
So I think some of the favorite things are some of the things you touched on already, Catherine, with the amount of innovation that's gone on in such a short period of time is amazing. And really hats off to the Studio for Teaching and Learning Innovation and to IT for taking a whole bunch of faculty who weren't necessarily using as much technology to then to be able to teach remotely and online is truly an amazing feat. And then the faculty themselves have really been reimagining all of their classes, which is it's truly amazing. Going from classes that are lecture-based to all the way through to hands-on lab-based teaching in the sciences that have now moved to this sort of online format. And very proud of all the faculty being able to rise to that challenge, and to the students in helping sort of reimagine all of those things. Is truly amazing. And then also the concern that everyone's showing for each other. There's an awful lot of really empathetic reaching out of people, the alumni reaching back to the community too as well. Just everyone just turning to each other and saying, how can I help? How can I make this better? How can we move forwards together? And it's just such a wonderful community to be part of, to see that kind of positive reaction.
How do you do biology online? Simple, naive question. I'm really curious.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole range of different kinds of things, including reaching out to people's academic communities. There's a lot of professional societies that are working collaboratively all around the world, because every country is basically going through this, and producing shared data models, online teaching models. There are people out in the field with GoPro cameras doing virtual field trips. There's all kinds of stuff going on right now. It's amazing.
That sounds incredibly exciting. For you and Carrie as well, and maybe just starting with you, John, again, what do you imagine we might gain from this? If you put your glass half full brain on in active mode right now, what are you seeing as the potential gains short and long term?
Well, one of the big ones is I think there's going to be a great evaluation of science's role in society as we move through this, understanding that the information that we're all trying to digest really matters, and it matters for forward planning too as well. And looking at campus, there's some interesting things to learn about sustainable operations too as well, I think, that can help us in the future, that could help us with other big global challenges like climate change and our carbon footprint, that would change in the way that we work, changing the way that we operate. And that could give us different models of thinking and sustaining the university too.
That's great. Carrie, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think that we are going to evolve to be able to integrate external resources in a way that's really meaningful, pull in different people from around the world into our classrooms in a way that we might not have had the bandwidth to figure out before. Before all this, Tulane was my favorite school, and I've had a lot of schools at this point because we struggled and we grew together and there was a connection. So if I could fly to New Orleans today and I could say to somebody, hey, I was a student here in 2005, they'd say to me, oh, really? Where'd you end up? And can I help you? And I never thought I'd find that in a university community ever again. But just in this week, I'm seeing that same exact thing at William & Mary. I'm seeing a resiliency, and I'm seeing this commitment to forming connections among the faculty, the staff, the students, and the administration. So I think people listening on this call will be able to come to campus in about 10 years, or who knows, maybe even a few months, and tell me, I was a student here in the spring of 2020, and I'll say, oh, really, where'd you end up, and can I help you? And that culture is going to really move William & Mary forward in lots of different ways that I think are exciting.
Thanks. I'd love to hear from the students too, things that maybe surprised you this week, and then things that you think we might be carrying forward and gain.
I think one of the things that I've just been thinking a lot about is a phrase we use, and I think both the professors addressed it really well. We talk a lot about deep human connection, and that being kind of a big part of us at William & Mary. And I think I realized kind of even though we're not physically on campus, that community exists. I mean, throughout the week, I've gotten so many texts from friends checking in. I've done a lot of Zoom calls. I'm doing one with a bunch of friends tonight. And so I think, but in addition to that, kind of from the student leadership perspective too, So many students have reached out to Kelsey and I and Ellie as well and kind of talked to us about, what can we do to help right now? How are our staff members doing? How can we make this transition easier for others who may not be as fortunate? And that's been, I think, so inspiring to see. I'm hoping we carry that deep human connection with us for a long, long time, just because I think it's been so important. I also think it's developed new ways of engaging, which is really cool. So like we live streamed our meeting on Tuesday, and we had 700 people tune in, which we don't have that kind of attendance in person normally. And it's because, I mean, it's in Blow Hall and you have to walk from one place to Blow Hall. And now to know that, people may actually tune in and choose to kind of be informed and things like that, in a way, we found a way to democratize this. And I think that's phenomenal and something I'd love to see implemented next year. So yeah.
That was Student Assembly's meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And how much of an increase is that from the usual Student Assembly meeting?
I can't calculate the percentage off the top of my head, but it's a big one. It's a big leap.
If I could piggyback off of Bobby, if it's okay, I think this also speaks to the change in the culture of philanthropy and giving, because as you said, we had a lot of donations to the Heart Fund, which was just established this year, if I'm correct, and just how people want to give and they're advocating for that online. Like, please donate to this. How sororities have taken this and said, we're going to advocate for this. Can you please donate to this? So I think a lot of students are taking the chance to say, like, how can I make a positive difference in my community, whether I'm on campus or not? And that's a beautiful thing. And I think that will definitely carry on to the future when we get back onto campus. How can we facilitate giving on an online setting and in person, which is going to increase exponentially how we can make a difference in our communities?
To piggyback off of what Bobby was saying earlier too about human connections, I think what I'm finding is that I'm engaging so much more intentionally with my friends, and I think that during the school year, at least this is my experience of Believe Mary, I feel like so many of us are so busy all the time, and that's because we're so passionate about so many things. And I think it's really easy to just say, oh, I'll hang out with this person next week, and kind of keep putting off those human connections in order to prioritize our schoolwork or extracurricular commitments. And now we're in a place where we have to really intentionally engage with those that we care about and make that time so that we can maintain those connections. And I think for me, this whole experience has made me so much more grateful for the relationships I've built at William and Mary, and appreciate the time that I had in person with them so much more. And also I'm appreciating this virtual time that I'm having with them. And I think I'm taking it less for granted.
Just thinking about that, John, earlier you were talking a little bit about strategies departments are using to create a sense of community. We've talked about classrooms, we've talked about student activities. Can you give us some examples of the way departments and programs are leaning into that community building in this new mode?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's very at the top of our heads right now is trying to make this semester special for seniors. I think we're really focusing on that because traditionally, this is the semester for them. And so they're missing out on some of those in-person traditions. And so we're trying to think about new traditions. What can we do as departments and programs to celebrate the seniors? And so within several departments, I can speak for biology itself, but I know many other departments and programs are also doing this. We're reaching out to the seniors and asking them, what makes a difference to you? What can your faculty do for you? And so we're bouncing around all kinds of ideas, from things like lip sync challenges to celebrate, to reading out quotes that students send in, like a sort of Kimmel mean tweets type of thing, to all kinds of activities. We're having a movie night tonight that's hosted by the Geology Club, and we'll all be watching a movie tonight and just running commentaries next to it. We just want to build it to be a celebration all the way through to the end of this semester. And then, planning for the in-person commencement activity when that happens too as well.
Are you willing to tell us what you're watching?
What are they watching? I did know this, it's on top of my head. It's a Nicolas Cage movie. It's National Treasure. Nothing to do with geology whatsoever. It's just a fun time.
It celebrates heroic academics, right?
Sure. It's a fun time.
Carrie, other examples that are coming to mind about ways of building community that you're seeing departments pursue or programs?
So I was just talking to some of my friends at the Global Research Institute yesterday, and I know that they're looking at new ways to form community, having happy hours where they introduce a topic and then talk about their day and what's going on. So this kind of virtual happy hour idea. I've also been engaging with a lot of public health schools around the world and forming new communities within my classrooms to get good information about what's really happening and foster new relationships that I think are going to be beneficial going forward. So there's fun things. There's also academic things that without this happening wouldn't have evolved.
So I want to shift gears a little and ask you, first the students and then the faculty, for students, what advice would you give other students? And then I'm going to have a follow-up question on that. But right now, what is your advice to other students about how we navigate this work together of making William and Mary in new modes, by distance, by different kinds of technology?
I can say something. I would say that make sure that you're being an advocate for yourself if you need to, and that you're speaking with your professors if you cannot turn in something on time because you're dealing with things at home, or if you're having a problem with your computer, make sure that you communicate with them because they're very understanding, as you see with Professor Swaddle and Professor Dolan. They want to help you. And also, if you need to have help with your friends, to make sure you're communicating with your friends, checking on your friends, or if you need that emotional support too, make sure you talk to your friends as well. So just know people are here for you, and just to let someone know if you need that help for sure.
I think building off of that, Aria, I think I would say that vulnerability is good, and I would advise not to shy away from that. Because while I have been trying to be optimistic, there's also been a lot of sadness that I've been feeling just from losing the rest of the semester in person, and from just navigating this switch and not leaving the house a lot. And there's a lot of sadness that comes with that. And I think that it's okay to acknowledge that. And I found that when I talk about it with people I care about, I often feel better afterwards, and we can share that together. It feels a lot less lonely, I think, when we can share it with each other, just to know that we're all feeling these similar things.
I think for me, something I've been thinking a lot about is a spot on campus, the terrace, which is kind of where a lot of people are when the weather is nice, like right around now. And you miss that you miss that a little bit. But I think starting to think about why that place is so special, and that's because as people, we like to be with others and we like to communicate with others. And I think so. The biggest thing that I've discovered is that keep up that human interaction, schedule it into your day. Find ways to communicate with those that you love that you may be far from now. And the other thing I'd say is that what Aria said was spot on. I think just ask for help. And I think something we'll really learn is to advocate for ourselves and to really ask when you need the support of a friend, when you need the support of a professor, because I found that people in the last 2 weeks have been more than willing to give it in whatever way that means. So, yeah.
Thanks. So, Carrie and John, what advice do you have for faculty and for staff who are supporting our teaching and learning and our research mission?
I think it's similar in the sense of communication, reaching out to people, asking for what you need, recognizing what you need, being a little self-reflective about your own position and realizing what your limitations may be, what your strengths are, and then trying to communicate that with people so people can help you. Because we're not bumping into each other in the hallways and stuff like that, it's difficult to know exactly how everyone's doing. And so we need people to be proactive in saying what they need so people can be helpful, because everyone does want to be helpful. And so it just takes a little bit more action there, where you just have to stop and think for a minute, okay, what can I actually do? What can I get done today? What do I need help with? And then collectively we'll move forwards.
So are there, for staff and for faculty, virtual water cooler convenings of different kinds?
Well, I know within biology, we meet regularly. And then, lab groups are meeting regularly too as well. And then various different supervisors are pulling their groups together among the staff too as well to check in with them. So I think there are those opportunities. but also with, with Zoom, and you can almost call on someone immediately too as well. So it's great to have access to the technology where you can just jump on a call with hardly any notice at all and just start talking to somebody.
Right. Somebody said to me recently, we know where we are, right? We know where people are located. You know they're there. Carrie, your thoughts about that? Advice you would give to faculty?
So I think, similar to what's been already communicated is uh, the importance of being honest about where you are in your day at any given point. Our days look different now, and sometimes things that we used to be able to do at 10 a.m., we no longer can do at 10 a.m. And to communicate that clearly and say what is so for each of us in this new space so that we stay on the same page. I also think that it's okay that things have shifted, that things are different, that the day might look different. And for me, when I was revising my syllabus for this next half of the semester, I looked to see what are the 2 or 3 things I really, really want the students to know, to leave with a proficiency in, to have a solid skill set to build on. And then I looked for the very best ways to teach those 2 to 3 things instead of trying to take my old work and then cram it into this new environment that we're living in. So giving ourselves flexibility to shift is my big thing that I'm thinking about now, and being open about where we are in our day, so we can all stay on the same page.
Carrie, I wanna make sure that you, given your field and expertise, have a chance to say anything that you want about, from the perspective of somebody who studies public health, what is going to matter in the actions that we take. I will say one of the hardest things about the last 3 weeks has been how much is happening so fast that is out of our control, and finding paths to shape and control and impact and make a difference matters so much to this community. So it would be wonderful to have you affirm the things that do matter and that can help.
So that's a big question. That's its own talk. But I think, I think the most important thing is getting access to good information. Good information right now. The London School has a really great class on COVID-19 that all of my epidemiology students are taking. It's with the best international experts in the field, and they're getting the most up-to-date information about what's coming out. Another great place to get resources is Johns Hopkins. There's a lot of bad information out there that people can hook into and then react based on that. So my first thing is get good information, base your decisions on science. The next thing that I would say is have a level of acceptance for how people interpret the information. So we are given information, we all interpret it differently. Most of us are trying to do our next best steps to stay safe and to honor the choices that people make, and respect them. The basic public health things. If you're sick, stay home, wash your hands. If somebody that you know is sick, don't shun them. Reach out to them and say, can I make you some food and put it on your porch? I currently have several friends who are very sick from this virus. It is very serious. It isn't a joke. It's very painful. It's debilitating. It's scary. There's not any treatment. It's a watch and wait sort of thing. And so we need to take it seriously and do our own next best steps using the best information that we have. So that's my 30-second little pitch.
Thanks. I welcome that pitch, and I will just say, I know there are a number of people in the healthcare field in our far-flung community, and on behalf of William and Mary, thank you for what you're doing. And the world's best scientists I know are working on treatments and on a vaccination, and we count on you, and we're incredibly grateful for that as well, because that will be the path forward to making what's been very challenging temporary. I want to ask the folks here, our guests, did we touch on all our top 5 questions? I think I missed one.
Yeah, if I could bring up something that we were discussing yesterday, President Rowe, I know a lot of the student body and even probably parents and people outside of William and Mary too, were discussing the decision for us to do opt-in pass fail now. So I would love if you could just tell everyone what you told me yesterday, why as an institution we decided to do that instead of universal pass or universal pass fail.
Oh, thank you. I knew there was one. Thanks, Aria. So we did think about that at some length, the deans, the vice provost, the provost, and in consultation with faculty. And we listened to students, and our conclusion is that a universal solution for everybody doesn't in fact meet everybody's needs. There are pretty diverse needs among the student body. Disciplines are varied in the way they look at this. And one of our principles in decision making has been to communicate centrally, but to problem solve locally. And by that I mean, one of the great strengths of William & Mary is that departments, faculty, staff in particular fields have a high degree of understanding about what makes students successful in those fields. So our decision was to come up with a menu of options that would give the choice to students to choose the option that worked best for them, rather than have only one choice, given how wide the individual needs were. And then to say something that we really believe in at William & Mary, which is make your decisions in consultation with your advisor, because our advisors are really serious in their care for students. They have the long view, and they will give good advice, and they know their fields. So we wanted to create options rather than to take away options. Well, thank you for asking that. Any other questions you think would be really helpful to speak to that we haven't spoken to?
I guess something that I'm kind of thinking about is once we come back to campus, what are you and what is everyone here really? What are we looking forward to in terms of, we talked a little bit about the changes that this is bringing. What do you think could change positively in the future, and how are we going to keep that change?
I think a lot about something Kelsey was saying. I would make it even more sharp. The intentionality. This is an institution that's always been really intentional about how we make community. I think we're going to add to that a layer of intentionality about the modes that we choose. And I'm so grateful for this kind of medium and so ready to be back face to face. I find myself turning off my devices way more deliberately than I used to. And even as I'm seeking ways to make the connection using the tools that we have. So I do hope that one of the things we gain for a community that cares a lot about how to do this well, how to be together well, is even more intentionality about the ways that we're choosing to come together. And I'm with Carrie too. I know that we are going to remember this moment for a very long time. What is happening now is unlike anything that's happened in my memory and in living memory. And so I do ask myself, I was talking with Kelsey about this, how do I want to remember now? My sister, who's a physician in Boston, asked me that question. So she asks it of herself every day. And it's true that what lies ahead, we don't know. This is unknown territory for William & Mary and for higher education and for the country. And I think holding on to that question, how do we want to remember how we were and how we stood together, is an incredible anchor at this moment. Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I think I'm going to wrap us up. I want to thank the guests for their thoughtfulness and for the time today. So great to see your faces and to hear about being in the classroom. And I do want to thank everybody online to say, please keep sending your questions our way. Those questions help us. They guide what we know the community needs to know. And they catch moments where we might not have communicated well, or there's a decision that we haven't seen needs to be made. I'm so grateful for your support, for your patience, and for the resilience that this whole community is showing as we chart the path forward. So please keep thinking with me and together, what can we learn? Abby's question. What can we gain from this experience? I know that what I'm going to remember of this moment is how William & Mary stood together. And I'm so honored to be standing with you. So everybody stay well, keep each other well. Thank you.